You're a burden. Pack up and leave. That was the last thing my mom ever said to me in person. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I didn't even close the door when I walked out. I just grabbed my keys, my laptop bag, and left behind 26 years of my life like it was a motel room I forgot to check out of. It wasn't until a month later, when my phone lit up with a text from my brother, of all people, that the full weight of what I'd walked away from finally caught up to me. "Why didn't you cover the mortgage this month?" he snapped. And I replied with just one line. "Oh, I thought you didn't need me." That's when the calls started. That's when everything exploded. But let me back up. I'm Evan, 26, and until recently, I lived with my mom and older brother in a house I technically owned. Yeah, you read that right. Owned. But we'll get there. Right now, I need to take you back to how this mess even started. I grew up in a small town outside Minneapolis. Not the cozy, everybody knows your name kind of small. More like the kind where the neighbors gossip about which trailer has the best meth lab, and everyone at church knows your family's business before you even do. My mom, Teresa, was one of those women who looked put together on the outside. Always had her hair curled, lipstick on, clothes ironed. But behind closed doors, she was a master manipulator. The kind of mom who'd praise you in front of your teachers and then berate you for hours afterward if you didn't smile the right way during the spelling bee. She was like a faucet with only two settings, saccharine sweet or scalding hot. Growing up, I learned to stay quiet. My brother, Derek, 5 years older than me, never had to. He was the golden boy. Varsity football, decent grades, loud and charming. People loved him instantly. He had my mom wrapped around his finger, and he knew it. I, on the other hand, was the quiet kid who liked computers, helped cook dinner, and didn't cause problems. Or maybe that was my problem. I didn't make enough noise. After high school, I did what nobody in our family really expected. I got a full ride to a state university, graduated early, and landed a decent remote IT job by 22. I didn't drink, didn't party, didn't blow my money. While my friends were upgrading their cars, I was investing. Stocks, real estate, saving, planning. I didn't do it to impress anyone. I did it because I wanted a life that didn't feel like I was constantly walking on eggshells. At 24, I bought a house. Not a mansion or anything, just a modest 3-bedroom in a decent neighborhood an hour from my childhood home. It was supposed to be a rental property, but then Mom called. She was crying. Said the rent on her place had gone up again, and she just couldn't keep up. Derek's job had slowed down, whatever that meant, and they were thinking of moving in with our aunt. But she hated her sister. It'd only be temporary, she said, just until we get back on our feet. I should have said no. I should have remembered all the times she threw my accomplishments in my face or acted like I was the weird one for wanting a stable job instead of some real man's work, like Derek. But she was my mom, and Derek was my brother. And I guess some part of me thought maybe, just maybe, this could finally be the moment they saw me as more than the quiet, helpful background character in their lives. So, I offered to let them move in. No rent. Just help with utilities. Maybe some groceries. That was it. The first month was okay. A little crowded, sure. My work setup took a hit. I had to move my desk from the office into my bedroom because Mom needed space for her sewing, which, by the way, she hadn't touched in years. Derek took the third room and spent most of his time on the couch watching sports or loudly FaceTiming his on-again off-again girlfriend. I told myself it was temporary, that it was fine. But little things started piling up. Dishes left in the sink for days. My groceries eaten without a word. Random Amazon packages showing up, fancy coffee pods, protein powder, even a freaking air fryer, none of which I ordered. When I brought it up, Mom waved me off. We're a family. Families share. When I said I needed receipts for the bills since I was covering the mortgage and the utilities were under my name, she got weirdly defensive. Are you keeping score now? That's ugly, Evan. Still, I kept my mouth shut. I worked longer hours. Bought noise-canceling headphones. Made spreadsheets to keep track of expenses. I even tried cooking family dinners once a week, hoping to build some kind of connection. But every time, it ended the same way. Derek criticizing my cooking or Mom comparing it to her recipes from 20 years ago. Then one day, I came home from a grocery run and my desk, my $1,200 standing desk that I assembled myself, was gone from my room. Where's my desk? I asked, confused. Oh, Mom said, like I had asked where the salt was. We moved it to the garage. Derek needed space for his home gym. His what? Derek popped his head out of the hallway. It's just temporary, dude. I'm bulking and needed somewhere to lift. You can work in the kitchen, can't you? I stared at him, waiting for the punchline. You turned my desk into a squat rack. Bro, relax. You're always so uptight. That was the moment the shift started happening. Not externally. They were still loud, still disrespectful, but inside me, something broke. Or maybe something woke up. For the next 2 weeks, I stopped making dinner. Stopped restocking the fridge. I even moved my monitors to the coffee table and worked from there, just to prove a point. But of course, that only gave them more reason to accuse me of being difficult. The final straw came on a random Tuesday night. I had just finished a brutal 12-hour day dealing with a server meltdown. I walked into the kitchen and saw my meal prep containers, the ones with the label Evan in big black letters, dumped out in the sink. Empty. Sauce smeared everywhere. Not even rinsed. Are you serious? I muttered. Mom, sitting at the dining table, barely glanced up. What? You ate all my food. Again? Well, you didn't say we couldn't, she said flatly. It had my name on it, and I made enough for my meals this week. Why are you being so selfish? She snapped. You think because you make a little money now, you're better than us? I didn't say that. You didn't have to. You walk around here like we're freeloaders. Like we owe you something. I paused, trying to control my breathing. You do live here rent-free. Her voice rose an octave. So now you're holding that over our heads? You know what, Evan? If you hate it so much, leave. I own the house, Mom. She stood up, eyes blazing. Then maybe you should start acting like a real man instead of hiding behind your precious computer. You're a burden, Evan. Always have been. You think your father left because of me? No. He couldn't handle you either. That hit harder than I expected. I didn't even realize I had dropped my keys until they hit the tile. I stood there for a long moment, trying to decide if I should scream, argue, do something. But instead, I turned around, walked back to my room, and started packing. Just my essentials. Clothes, laptop, chargers, toothbrush. I left the bed, the furniture, everything. When I walked past her on my way out, she didn't say a word. Neither did Derek. They just stared at the TV, like I was some side character who had served his purpose. No goodbye, no fight, just silence. And for a month, that silence stretched on like a warm blanket. I crashed at a friend's place at first. Got a short-term sublet after that. Focused on work. Focused on myself. Then one afternoon, as I was walking back from a coffee shop, my phone buzzed. It was Derek. Why didn't you cover the mortgage this month? I blinked at the message. And then I smiled. I typed one line. Oh, I thought you didn't need me. That's when the phone call started. And that's when everything began to unravel. The first call came from Derek. I didn't answer. He called again and again and again until I finally turned off my phone. That night, I lay in my tiny sublet studio, staring at the water-stained ceiling and wondering how long it would take them to realize I wasn't bluffing. Spoiler, not long. By morning, I had voicemails. Half of them from Derek, the other half from Mom. The first few were still in that arrogant, condescending tone they always used. Derek shouting, "You're acting like a child, Evan. You can't just walk out and stop paying for the house," followed by Mom chiming in with her usual passive-aggressive guilt tripping. "This is what happens when you put money over family. I didn't raise you to be like this." But around message number 11, their tone changed. Derek, "Okay, man, seriously, we just need to know. Did you cancel the mortgage auto-pay?" Cause it bounced. "Mom, we got a letter from the bank. They said we're in default." "What does that mean? Are they gonna foreclose?" I sipped my coffee and listened to the whole stack of voicemails while folding laundry. No emotion, no regret, just a strange, detached clarity that I hadn't felt in years. Because here's the thing they refused to understand. The house was mine. Not just technically, fully, legally. I bought it under my name, paid cash, no mortgage for me. The mortgage they referred to? That was a monthly loan I had taken out after they moved in, because Mom asked me to help Derek build credit. I added him as an authorized user and used the loan to simulate a mortgage with payments they were supposed to cover. But, of course, I had covered it every single month myself. Until now. They didn't even know they weren't paying a real mortgage. And it gets better. That $1,200 rent they thought they were saving? I had been placing that same amount into a savings account since the day they moved in. Just in case. For this exact moment. But let me rewind a little. Because the betrayal didn't start when I left. It started long before, in 100 subtle, quiet ways that most people would overlook. I just didn't want to see it. The truth is, I wanted their approval. I wanted to believe that if I worked hard enough, gave enough, smiled enough, they'd finally see me as something more than the weird younger brother who fixed the Wi-Fi and kept to himself. That belief cracked a little every time they dismissed something I did. When I got promoted at work. Cool, but what's your salary again? Derek asked with a smirk. That IT stuff is just typing, right? When I mentioned I was investing in property, Mom rolled her eyes and said, real estate? That's for old men. When I bought the house and offered them a place to stay, they moved in like they owned the place. Derek immediately claimed the biggest bedroom, and Mom took over the second one. I was left with the smallest room, the one I had originally set up as an office. And the little things added up. Like when Mom hosted a dinner for her friends and introduced Derek as her pride and joy, while I stood awkwardly in the kitchen, carving the roast I had cooked myself. Or when she forgot my birthday for the third year in a row, literally didn't mention it, while planning Derek's birthday party for 2 months straight, complete with a $400 custom cake that I paid for because she put it on the joint card we shared for house expenses. Then came the favor that broke me. About 2 weeks before I left, Derek approached me in the living room. I was on a late-night call with a coworker from overseas, clearly busy, headset on, laptop glowing in the dark. He didn't care. Yo, Evan. Quick thing. Can I put the BMW in your name? I paused the call. What? My car. I want to refinance it, but my credit's still trash. If we put it in your name, I'll get a better rate. Derek, no. Why not? You've got good credit, don't you? That's not the point. That's a huge responsibility. What if you miss payments? He scoffed. Dude, don't be dramatic. I'm good for it. You still owe me for the last 3 months of utilities. He waved that off like it was a joke. It's like $100. It's actually closer to 400. Bro, relax. It's just money. I stared at him. Exactly. That was the first time I saw something in his eyes shift. Like he finally realized I wasn't going to roll over. Like he saw me as an obstacle for the first time, not a resource. That night, I found my toothbrush in the toilet. I wish I were kidding. I walked into the bathroom, and there it was, floating in the bowl like some sick prank. I didn't even ask who did it. I just stared at it, then walked out, grabbed my keys, and left. They thought I was bluffing. They thought I'd be back in a day or two. But I didn't come back. Not even when they started calling. Not even when they claimed the bank was harassing them. And that's when things really went south. Because Derek? He panicked. He had used my address for his new gym membership, his credit card application, even a loan from one of those sketchy payday loan places. Now he was getting notices. So was Mom. And suddenly, I wasn't a burden anymore. I was essential. Funny how fast things change when the free ride ends. The voicemails turned into emails. Then texts. Then DMs on social media. Then came the letter. I got it at my sublet. A white envelope with my name scrawled in red ink, like some dramatic soap opera prop. No return address. Inside was a handwritten note from Mom. A real letter. The kind she hadn't written since I was a kid. It started with guilt. I don't know why you're doing this to us, Evan. We're family. We've always been there for you. Then manipulation. You know your brother isn't perfect, but he looks up to you. You're hurting him. You're hurting me. Then rage. This is your home, Evan. You don't get to just walk away and take everything with you. You're acting selfish. Cruel. Heartless. This isn't the son I raised. I read it twice. Then I folded it up and slid it into the back of my desk drawer, next to the expired lease from my first apartment and a birthday card from a coworker. It didn't hurt. Not like I thought it would. The real betrayal, the shocking betrayal, came 2 days later. I got a notification from my bank. $1,300 withdrawn from my business savings account. I stared at it, frozen. That account was separate from everything else. It wasn't even linked to the household expenses. I opened the app, heart pounding. The withdrawal had come from a branch near my old neighborhood. In person, with my debit card. Only one other person had ever held that card. My mother. Years ago, when she helped me open the account, I had listed her as a trusted contact. A formality, I thought. Just in case. She had access. I'd never revoked it. Until now. I raced to the bank, filed a fraud report, canceled the card, changed every password I could remember. But the damage was done. $1,300. Gone. The exact amount of the past due mortgage payment on their end. I don't know what stung more, that she stole from me, or that she did it with the same calm entitlement she always had. Like it was hers. Like I owed her that, too. That night, I sat in my car outside the sublet, engine idling, fists clenched around the steering wheel. I wasn't angry. I was done. For years, I had let them chip away at me. Slowly, quietly, like water eroding stone. I gave, and gave, and gave, hoping they'd finally say, "Thank you," or "We're proud of you," or even just, "You matter to us." But all I ever got was silence. Or worse, gaslighting. And now, they'd stolen from me, lied to me, used me, and they still expected me to fix it. That was the night I started planning my revenge. But not the screaming, dramatic kind. Not some petty vendetta. No, this was going to be surgical, slow, methodical. I'd play the part of the quiet son one last time. Let them think I was still the background character. Let them think I was weak. Because the moment I got that text from Derek, "You didn't pay the mortgage this month?" That was the moment the game changed. That was the moment I stopped playing defense. And it was only the beginning. There's a strange kind of quiet that settles in after your world collapses. Not loud, not panicked. Just this low, constant hum, like white noise filling the spaces where your life used to be. That's what the first week after the theft felt like. I wasn't angry. I wasn't sad. I wasn't anything, really. I moved through my days like I was underwater, working, eating, responding to emails, nodding through Zoom meetings, but everything felt muted. I didn't tell anyone what had happened. Not my coworkers. Not my 1 or 2 college friends I still kept in touch with. Not even Jordan, the guy I was sort of seeing but kept at arm's length because I didn't trust anyone with the mess I came from. I guess that was the real rock bottom. Not the betrayal. Not the voicemail threats. Not even the stolen money. It was sitting in a room I barely lived in, eating instant noodles out of a plastic bowl, staring at a bank app showing $1,300 less than it should, and realizing, truly realizing, that I had spent most of my adult life trying to be loved by people who only loved what I could do for them. And now that I was no longer useful, I was disposable. That night, I turned my phone off completely. Not on silent. Not do not disturb. Off. I deleted the text thread with my mom. Archived the ones with Derek. I didn't block them. I wanted to see how far they'd go. But I needed silence. And space. For the first time in my life, I wanted to be selfish. And that's where the rebuilding began. Not with some dramatic movie moment. Not with a triumphant declaration or revenge plan. With small things. The next morning, I went for a walk. No destination. Just a 20-minute loop around the block. I hadn't realized how long it had been since I moved my body for anything other than pacing during work calls. Then I bought a new toothbrush. A stupidly expensive one. Electric. Rechargeable. Bluetooth-enabled. The kind that probably didn't make any real difference, but felt like a middle finger to the one that ended up in the toilet. Then I cooked myself a proper breakfast. Eggs, toast, avocado, the works. No meal prepping for ungrateful housemates. No labels. Just food for me. It sounds laughably small, but when your self-worth has been ground down by years of emotional neglect and casual cruelty, those tiny acts of care start to feel like rebellion. The next real shift came when I finally opened up to someone. It was Jordan, of all people. We hadn't seen each other in a couple weeks, mostly because I kept canceling. But he texted me one afternoon with a picture of a dog he saw at the park, a scruffy little mutt in a hoodie, and for some reason, I laughed. Like, full-on, stupid, ugly laughed. And I texted back, "Want to grab coffee?" We met up that evening. I was awkward, distant at first. But he didn't push. Just let me talk when I was ready. I didn't tell him everything. Just the general outline. Family moved in. Took advantage. I left. Things got ugly. He didn't interrupt. He didn't try to fix it. He just listened. And then he said something I'll never forget. "That's not your family's house anymore. That's your scar." I didn't get it at first. But he explained. Scars aren't things you go back to. They're things that remind you who you are now. You don't live in the pain. You carry the proof that you survived it. That hit me like a freight train. Because for months, years, honestly, I'd been trying to fix the wound. Make it heal perfectly. Pretend like the damage could be undone. But it couldn't. And maybe it didn't have to be. I went home that night and pulled up the old documents. The title deed, the property records, the utilities, the shared accounts. And I started making cuts. I removed Mom from every shared utility, canceled the joint credit card, froze the business account, and opened a new one under a new LLC. Changed the passwords to everything they'd ever touched. Then I filed a report for the stolen $1,300. I had receipts. I had timestamps. I had surveillance footage from the bank's ATM showing my mother, clear as day, using the card. The bank didn't even argue. They refunded me within a week. That moment, getting that money back, wasn't about the cash. It was about control. For the first time, I felt like I had it. And from there, the rise wasn't linear. But it was steady. I started sleeping better, eating better, working better. I pitched a new project to my manager, a client security dashboard redesign, and got the green light. Within 3 weeks, I was leading a small team. Within 2 months, my manager pulled me aside and said, "We're bumping your title. Senior engineer. You've earned it." I didn't cry, but I wanted to. Because for the first time in years, the recognition came from merit. Not obligation. Not manipulation. Not guilt. Just effort. And then I did something crazy. I bought a second property. Nothing huge, a fixer-upper duplex on the edge of town. Needed new floors, a fresh coat of paint, some plumbing work. But it had good bones. And more importantly, it was mine. I didn't tell anyone. Not even Jordan at first. Just quietly made the purchase, hired the contractors, spent my weekends painting cabinets and tearing up carpet while listening to audiobooks. It was therapeutic, in a way I didn't expect. With every nail I hammered, every tile I replaced, I felt like I was rebuilding something inside me. One Saturday, while patching drywall in the upstairs hallway, I got a call from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. An hour later, another call. Same number. I finally answered, expecting it to be spam. It was Derek. "Hey," he said, voice tight. "We need to talk." I didn't say anything. "I know you're pissed. But Mom's not doing great. She's stressed out." The bank called again. I waited. He sighed. "Look, man, we've been trying to keep up with the bills, but it's a lot." "You mean my bills?" I said calmly. He hesitated. "Okay, yeah, but it's your house, right? We thought you were still handling that." "You also thought I was a burden," I replied. Silence. Then he muttered, "Yeah, that was messed up." I didn't say anything. Just let the silence sit between us like fog. He cleared his throat. "So what now?" I smiled. Not because I was happy, but because I finally knew the answer. "Now," I said, "now you learn what it feels like to be responsible. Evan, come on." Click. I ended the call. Because I wasn't done rising. Not yet. But I had a plan. And they weren't going to like it. The call with Derek confirmed what I already suspected. They still didn't get it. They still thought this was temporary. That I'd calm down, come to my senses, and slide back into my old role. The provider, the fixer, the human safety net that always caught them when they stumbled. They didn't understand I wasn't angry anymore. I was something much worse. Focused. See, people like my mom and Derek depend on patterns. They rely on you not changing. They weaponize your guilt and predictability. But when you stop reacting how they expect, the ground under their feet starts to crack. And I was done playing the role of the passive, silent son. It was time to let that old version of me die. But first, I needed to tie up some loose ends. The house was still legally mine. Always had been. But with them squatting in it and refusing to pay, I needed to get strategic. I didn't want a messy confrontation. No screaming matches. No scenes. I wanted control. So, I started researching landlord-tenant laws in my state. It was a quiet obsession. I devoured forums, read legal guides, watched landlord advice videos on YouTube at 2 a.m. while sipping tea like it was a Netflix binge. I joined a couple property management Facebook groups under a fake name, just to ask the questions I didn't want traced back to me. And here's what I learned. Despite what most people think, you can evict a family member. It's harder. It's messy, but it's legal. And since there was no formal lease, they were considered tenants at will, which meant I could start the process with a proper notice to vacate. But I also knew if I just served papers, they'd dig in their heels. Make life hell. Maybe even destroy the house out of spite. I'd seen what Derek did when he was angry, and I had no doubt Mom would twist it into some dramatic martyr story about how her son abandoned her. So I needed leverage. Something they couldn't argue with. Something that would make leaving feel like their only option. Enter the house inspection. I called the local housing department and scheduled a voluntary health and safety inspection on the property. Not because it was falling apart, but because I knew they had done things that violated code. Like installing Derek's janky gym equipment in the garage without ventilation. or mom's endless plug-in air fresheners overloading the outlets. And, of course, the kitchen, which they never cleaned, despite rotting food sitting in the sink half the week. When the inspector came by, I followed behind like an innocent, curious homeowner. I didn't say anything was wrong. I just stood in the doorway, hands in my pockets, and let the smell speak for itself. He clicked his tongue. Electrical overload. Fire hazard. He poked his head in the bathroom. Mold behind the shower tiles. He opened the utility closet. This HVAC hasn't been serviced in 3 years? Nope, I said cheerfully. I asked them to handle it when they moved in. Guess they forgot. He raised an eyebrow. They? Oh, I smiled. My mom and brother. I let them stay here a while back. No rent. Just asked them to take care of things while I was out of town for work. You know how family is. He nodded slowly, scribbling on his clipboard. The report he sent me 2 days later was a gift. Pages of minor violations. Not enough to get the house condemned, but enough to justify a complete and immediate request for vacancy while I performed urgent repairs. It gave me the legal footing to serve a notice to vacate, with a firm 30-day deadline. I printed it on crisp white paper, folded it neatly, hand-delivered it one afternoon after I knew they'd be out. I didn't ring the bell. I just slipped it through the mail slot, then walked away. The next day, the text started again. Derek, you're kicking us out. What is wrong with you? Mom, after all we've done for you, this is how you repay us. I didn't reply. I didn't have to. The document spoke for itself. And this time, they couldn't play dumb. They knew I meant business. But that wasn't enough for me. I didn't just want them out. I wanted them to understand what they'd thrown away. So I started documenting everything. The kitchen rot. The garbage overflow. The stains in the carpet that hadn't been cleaned since I left. I hired a photographer to take high-res photos of every corner of the house. Not to shame them, yet, but because I wanted a record. Evidence. Something tangible to look back on when they inevitably tried to rewrite history. Then I called a locksmith. I scheduled the rekeying for exactly 31 days after the notice had been delivered, not a day before. I wasn't giving them any room to claim unlawful eviction. I followed every rule, every legal deadline, every procedural detail. And during those 31 days, I waited and watched. I drove by the house once a week, just a quick loop around the block. I never got out, never lingered, but I saw the signs. Lights on at 3 a.m., loud music echoing through the garage. New car in the driveway, a beat-up Dodge Charger I didn't recognize. And once, just once, I saw Derek stumbling out the front door, shirtless, beer can in hand, yelling at someone over the phone. I parked a block away and took a picture, just in case. Meanwhile, I kept working. Promoted again, this time to lead developer. Bigger paycheck. More responsibility. My boss pulled me aside one day and said, "You've been killing it lately." Something changed. I just smiled. Yeah, I stopped investing in bad code. And I meant it. Because for the first time in my life, I was finally investing in me. I even started dating Jordan seriously. I brought him to see the duplex, showed him the renovations, told him about my plans to rent out the units. He was quiet at first, then said, "You're building an empire." Nah, I said, grinning. Just reclaiming the kingdom. But even with everything going right, part of me still waited for the other shoe to drop. Because people like my mom, they don't go quietly. So when day 30 rolled around, I wasn't surprised to find a voicemail from her. "Evan, please call me." I just call me. I didn't. Instead, I scheduled a police standby for the next day, just in case. And on day 31, I drove to the house with the locksmith, the officer, and a printout of the eviction notice, inspection report, and photo documentation in a neat little folder. When we arrived, the driveway was empty. The blinds were drawn. I knocked once. No answer. The officer knocked. Waited. Knocked again. Still nothing. "Your call," he said. I nodded to the locksmith. Within minutes, the door was open. The house was quiet. Eerily so. Empty pizza boxes on the table. Trash bags in the hall. The air smelled like stale beer and sweat. A broken lamp in the living room. One of my dining chairs missing a leg. But they were gone. No note. No message. No apology. Just absence. And yet, somehow, it felt like victory. Because they hadn't left out of respect. They'd left because they had to. Because I gave them no choice. I stood in the living room for a long time after the officer left. Just taking it in. The silence. The stillness. The ownership. It wasn't joy I felt. It wasn't even satisfaction. It was something deeper. Closure. But I wasn't done. Because while the house was empty, the damage wasn't. And neither was the story. I had a plan for what came next. One that would finally show them what I had become. And what they had lost. Because forgiveness? That wasn't in my toolbox. But consequences? I had plenty of those. Revenge isn't always loud. It doesn't have to be fire and fury, slammed doors, and screaming matches. Sometimes, the most satisfying revenge is quiet. The kind that unfolds so calmly, so methodically, that by the time your enemies realize what's happening, it's already too late to stop it. That was the kind I wanted. After I had the house back, the first thing I did was document the damage. Every cracked wall, every missing fixture, every beer stain on the carpet. I brought in a property inspector and an appraiser. I didn't rush it. I made sure everything was official, every detail recorded. Then I hired a contractor for the repairs and kept the invoices. All of them. I wasn't just fixing the house. I was building a case. Next, I made a call to my attorney, a guy named Philip I'd worked with when I bought the duplex. Straightforward, no-nonsense guy. Not cheap, but worth every cent. I want to sue for property damage and unauthorized use of funds, I told him. And I have receipts. There was a pause on the line. Then, you're serious. Dead serious. He asked me to send everything. Photos, bank statements, texts, the inspection report, the eviction paperwork. I compiled it into a folder labeled Teresa and Derek, final draft. Philip called me 2 days later. We have a case. And that's when the wheels began to turn. We filed a small claims suit. Nothing flashy, just enough to sting. I wasn't after millions. I was after principle. We listed damages to the property, the stolen $1,300, and the unpaid utilities they promised to cover. Everything was clean, documented, and legal. Then came the real play, the credit reporting agencies. Derek, in his infinite wisdom, had used my address to open several lines of credit. And once I had proof he no longer resided at the property, eviction notice, police standby, and a signed affidavit from the inspector, I disputed every single account tied to my name or address. And they were removed. But the accounts didn't vanish. They were reassigned. To him. That's how Derek found out I had reported him. The meltdown was glorious. He tried calling, texting, even showed up outside my duplex once, pounding on the door, screaming that I was ruining his life. I didn't answer. I just called the police and filed a restraining order. He left before they arrived, but the paper trail was enough. A week later, I got a message from an unknown number. You really think this makes you better than us? I blocked it. Then came the court date. They showed up late. Derek in a wrinkled polo, Mom in a blouse I recognized from one of the birthdays she never celebrated. They didn't look at me when I walked in, just stared straight ahead like they were the victims in some made-for-TV movie. Philip and I sat at our table, calm and prepared. He presented our case, documentation, damages, bank statements, the full timeline. He was surgical, no emotion, no embellishment. Just facts, cold and sharp. Then it was their turn, and they fumbled. They claimed I gave them permission to use my card, that I'd gifted the utilities, that I never told them there was a problem. At one point, Derek actually said, he never said we couldn't drink his beer. The judge raised an eyebrow. Mr. Foster, the issue isn't beer. It's the $1,300 withdrawal from your brother's business account. Derek looked at Mom. She looked at her lap. They had nothing. We won. The court ordered them to pay restitution for the damages and the unauthorized withdrawal, plus filing fees. Not a life-ruining amount, but enough to hurt. Enough to remind them. They didn't even look at me when the gavel fell. But the fallout was only just beginning. Because while they were still reeling from the judgment, I made my next move. I posted the eviction photos on a property management forum. No names, just images. The trashed kitchen, the broken door frame, the note I found on the fridge that said, Evan's a snake. Don't trust him. The post blew up. People asked questions. I answered vaguely. Tenants at will. Family members. Took advantage. It became a cautionary tale, shared in real estate groups and landlord threads. One guy messaged me privately and said, Dude, this sounds exactly like my cousin. I just replied, Be careful who you let stay rent-free. But I wasn't done. I took the restitution payment, when it finally came in, and used it to repaint the house. Not just touch-ups. A full, top-to-bottom refresh. New siding. New shutters. New door. a new name on the mailbox. Then I listed it for rent. Premium pricing. Background checks. No tolerance for nonsense. The new tenants were a couple in their 50s. Empty nesters. Polite. Respectful. The kind of people who fix things before you even notice they're broken. They moved in with smiles and a casserole. And just like that, the house was no longer my scar. It was income. Meanwhile, Derek's credit took a hit. Hard. I know because a mutual acquaintance, someone I barely spoke to in high school, messaged me out of the blue. Hey, I heard Derek tried to buy a car and got denied. Something about collections. I just said, yeah, I think he had some unresolved issues. And Mom? Well, the last I heard, she was living with a cousin in Iowa. The same cousin she used to call a washed-up drunk with 6 cats. Apparently now, she's a godsend. Funny how perspective shifts when the gravy train stops running. As for me, I kept building. The duplex turned into a triplex. Then I picked up a small commercial space, a little cafe downtown that needed a new leaseholder. I didn't open a business. I rented it to someone who did. I kept dating Jordan. We didn't rush anything, but it felt easy. Right. He never asked me to explain the whole story, just held my hand through the worst parts and told me, you deserve to be free. And eventually, I was. Free from guilt. Free from the need for their approval. Free from the belief that family has to hurt to be real. They say blood is thicker than water. But I've learned something else. Respect is thicker than both. And the day I walked past that newly painted house, rent check in hand, smiling tenants waving from the porch, I realized I hadn't just taken my life back. I'd rebuilt it. From the ashes they left behind. Brick by brick. Dollar by dollar. And I didn't do it for revenge. I did it to prove something. Not to them. To me. I was never the burden. I was the foundation.